Hello and welcome, campers. My name is Mark, and you are here for coffee and card games with Mark this morning. So sit back, relax, and I hope you learn a little something about Star Wars Unlimited today. Speaking of which, at this point, you've probably been seeing a couple of videos crop up in your YouTube feed if you're a card gamer enthusiast like me that have been telling you about this new card game called Star Wars Unlimited. And perhaps you've even seen some pack cracking different videos where people are showing you the new cards that they're opening up. And you're beginning to ask yourself, what exactly is this new card game that I'm seeing things about online? Well, don't worry, I'm going to take you through a brief overview of the game, and I'm also going to be telling you a little bit about its developer and hopefully helping you understand if this is something that you want to get into. If you're new to our channel, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. We have three guys who've played a lot of card games, both digital and physical, who've been podcasting together for years, and we are expanding out into making YouTube content for all kinds of card games. We're super excited about it, and we hope you're really enjoying it. I am going to be tackling Star Wars Unlimited because it is a card game that I am really psyched out of my mind for, and I cannot wait to get into. I hope you'll be excited about it after this video as well. We're going to be going over gameplay, and I'm going to be comparing it to a lot of the other card games so you can get an idea, if you've played those games, about whether or not this is the game for you. So first off, Star Wars Unlimited is a trading card game made by Fantasy Flight Games. Now, if you know anything about Fantasy Flight, you might know that they make all sorts of different living card games, both cooperative and semi-cooperative. Things like Marvel Champions, which you can see the boxes from my Marvel Champions collection on the wall behind me. I love the living card games that Fantasy Flight puts out. Many of them are strictly cooperative card games, but some of them are actually semi-cooperative, meaning you can play the cooperative mode of them, but you can also pull all of those cards out of what you get, and you can play against your friend mono e mono with the decks that you've created. Now, a living card game and a trading card game are a little bit different. In a living card game, you know exactly what you're getting. There's regular installments and infusions of new cards, and you go out and buy those cards, but you're going to get full playsets of them and know exactly what you have. A trading card game, however, has various varieties and rarities of cards in a given set, and you buy them in packs, booster packs mostly, sometimes in starter sets or starter decks, things like that. Now, while Fantasy Flight Games is clearly most known for their cooperative and semi-cooperative living card games as of late, they're also no stranger to the trading card game world. Fantasy Flight is notorious for quitting on games whenever they become less popular or less profitable, but with an intellectual property like Star Wars and a game plan like the folks over at Fantasy Flight say they have, with multiple sets already in development or ready to go out, with new expansions coming soon, I think we can bet that Star Wars Unlimited is going to be a game that they're going to heavily invest in, and one that's going to be around for at least, well, I'm hoping several years, if not decades. I think they have the basics for a really great game here. At its core, Star Wars Unlimited has a lot of the same basic mechanics that you're going to see in any other trading card game or card battler game. Whether you play digitally in a game like Hearthstone or Legends of Runeterra, or you play physical games like Magic the Gathering or Pokemon, there are going to be some strong similarities in the basics of this game. I think where this game is really unique is in its deck building, which is what it promises in the name Unlimited, saying that you can put any card that you want inside your deck. Now, that being said, a lot of games allow you to put any card that you want. Magic the Gathering has been around for decades, and you could put any card that you want in your deck. I remember back in the day sitting down to play Magic the Gathering, creating 5 Keller decks and thinking that's really cool. As it turns out, while you can do it, it's almost always bad. And I think you'll see from this, and a lot of other card games kind of use a word recently to kind of create a little bit of buzz. There's a mechanic in it that's related to it. Marvel Snap is a great example of that, where there's a little bit of a gimmick involved there. I think Star Wars Unlimited plays on that really well, in the fact that I think that the unlimited nature of Star Wars Unlimited is a total gimmick. I think it's typically a trap to put in any card that you want because of how punished you get in the game mechanics for doing it. However, I do believe that the deck building is really unique, and I think the gameplay is a great montage of all sorts of really cool things that have gone into different card games. I think they've collected and made something really unique here. Now, I'm not going to go over the base anatomy of cards in this game, although you can certainly go on YouTube and find lots of videos like that. They'll tell you what all of the numbers and things on these cards mean, along with their various factions. What I want to do for you in this video is go over a basic gameplay video of what a round in this game might look like, so you can understand if it's a game you think that you're going to like. And with that, I'm going to go ahead over and we're going to look at a desktop, and we're going to look at a basic setup for a game of Star Wars Unlimited. And you can find this exact thing in the How to Play guide over on the Fantasy Flight and Star Wars Unlimited website if you want to check it out there. But if you take a look here, you're going to notice there's not a lot here that's super surprising. In each game of Star Wars Unlimited, your deck is going to be made up of at least 50 cards, no more than 3 copies of any given card, 1 base, and 1 leader. That leader is going to have 2 sides, both an inactive and an active side of its card. In addition to that, your base is going to have either 30 or, at least in the beginning, if you use a rare base, 25 hit points. The goal of the game is to eliminate your opponent's base by dealing enough damage to destroy it. You can see here on the screen we have a resource row, a deck, a leader row, a base row, and a hand. What you don't see from here is on the left and on the right of your hero and base, you have 2 different lanes for combat. On one hand, you're going to have a space lane, and it's going to be mirrored on the same side as your opponent. And on the other, you're going to have a ground lane. Now, this mechanic is really interesting. These 2 lanes don't actually interact with one another much. So on one side, you're going to be flying ships at your opponent's base, and on the other side, you're going to be taking Han Solo and Chewie and trying to smash down the doors of the Imperials. I think it's really fun, and it plays on a really great mechanic of my all-time favorite digital card game, The Elder Scrolls Legends. Now, this game is no longer supported, or I think you can still play it, but it hasn't been developed for a couple of years. They had 2 lanes. One was your main field lane, and the other one was the shadow lane. Depending on where you placed your characters, it would do different things. The field lane you could play in, and your creature could immediately be attacked and activated. If you played things in the shadow lane, they were hidden there for the first round, and then they came out of stealth. Now, although those aren't the key mechanics of the space and ground lane, the 2-lane mechanic, I think, is really interesting. Marvel Snap has a 3-lane mechanic, although there is a lot of movement and interaction between them. In this game, there's not. You have space units for your space lane, ground units for your ground lane, enabling you to create a deck that really focuses on one or the other, or perhaps takes a balanced approach that can maybe stop some damage from your opponent's main lane of aggression and take advantage of your opponent's weak lane at the same time. I think that this is really interesting, and I think it enables us to see things like really aggressive ground lane or really aggressive space lane decks, and also simultaneously be able to see decks that want to control and manipulate both lanes at the same time. I think the 2-lane mechanic idea, specifically specifying that different types of cards go into different lanes, enables you to do some really fun and creative things in deck building. It adds an entirely new dimension to how you're going to play the game. I think that is one of the first key reasons that you should consider playing Star Wars Unlimited, because it's really fun. You'll also notice on both the base and on your hero, you have a handful of symbols. Now, on this screen, it might be a little bit hard to see, but for example, you have a blue symbol and a heroism symbol on your Luke. Your base has a yellow symbol. On the other side of the board, you have a villainy, the black symbol, a red symbol on Darth Vader, and you have a base with a green symbol. Now, this is where Star Wars Unlimited really goes to get its name. In deck building, you are unlimited. You may put any card inside your deck that you want, whether that be cards that are red, blue, yellow, or green. Villainy or heroism can all go in your deck. So you can play Luke Skywalker with Darth Vader's lightsaber if you want, for example. And it could be really fun and cool, thematic, cinematic that could be really, like, if that's something in your imagination, you can actually do that in this game, which is really fun. However, you are going to be severely punished for that. So all cards in this game have a cost in their top left-hand corner. Now, the cards on the screen right now don't, because this is just for the setup of the game. But like every card game, you're going to pay resources to be able to play cards. And we'll get into how you're going to get resources throughout the game in just a moment as we get into how a game is actually played. We're still in how you're going to be constructing your deck right now. Let me go ahead and come back to the main screen. So when you're constructing your deck, you're going to be taking your hero and your base, and that's going to be giving you a handful of icons. You're always going to be gaining either a heroism or a villainy icon. For example, this card just has a heroism icon on it, and then you're going to be getting one or two different colors of the various factions that you can put in your deck. Now, you can put anything you want in your deck, but after you do that, when you actually go to play the game, every icon that's on one of your cards that you can't match with your leader in base is going to increase the cost of playing that card by 2. So you might have that Luke blue and a base of yellow, for example, and if you play a green card that costs 2, sure, you can play it, but it's going to cost you 4 to play instead, which almost always makes that card utterly and totally unplayable in the speed of a typical card game, especially in, well, when we get to combat, you'll see, because I think that this game has a tendency to favor aggressors over defensive strategies, just because of the core mechanics in its combat. I haven't actually played much of the game yet, but that's my impression, at least as I'm looking at the core mechanics of how combat is going to work. So yes, it's unlimited in the fact that you can put anything you want in the deck, but you're probably going to want to line up your deck with the different faction things of your leader, right? Of the leader and the base that you choose. Because if you don't, you're going to be punished for that. For example, Luke Skywalker with Vader's lightsaber, I think being red in villainy, instead of it costing you, I think, 2 mana or 2 energy or whatever to be able, resources to be able to put out there, is going to end up costing you 6, because you're not going to have red or villainy on your board if you're playing Luke with a green base. 6 for a 2-cost card is outrageous. Something else that's important to point out is that some cards in this game actually have 2 of the same faction icon on them. So there are different abilities and different minions that you put out on the board that have maybe 2 yellow or 2 red icons. You must pay 2 more for each icon you cannot cover, not just the colors that you match. So if you have one that is 2 yellow and you are playing a yellow hero with a blue base, that card is still going to cost you an additional 2 because you're only able to cover one of the yellow icons. One of the things that I love in their card design is this enables them to very easily encourage people to play mono-colored decks. Meaning, yes, they're going to have heroism or villainy off of their leader, but then whatever color their leader is, let's say they're green, they're going to want to play a green base. Meaning they're going to predominantly play green cards. I think that's a really interesting way in card design to create reasons for you want to play really powerful cards, but limiting your capability to play a lot of other cards in the game. Let's grab a sip of coffee before we move on. Coming back here to this, you're going to have, once again, your space lane, your ground lane. When you start the game, you're going to get a hand of cards. You're going to choose 2 of those cards to play face down as resources. Now, this plays a little bit like the old World of Warcraft card game and a little bit like Lorcana, in the fact that the cards that you draw and get in your hand are going to be the very same cards that you're going to use to play the other cards in your hand. Lorcana, however, makes it so that you actually have to have an inking symbol around the cost of the card in order to put it into your ink well, which I think is a really cool name, by the way. That's the place that you're going to use resources to be able to play other cards from your hand. In this game, however, you can use any card that you want. Any card from your hand, you can dump it face down. And if I remember correctly, the original World of Warcraft trading card game, not Hearthstone, the original World of Warcraft trading card game did this really well. And so you place cards face down, that's going to give you energy or resources to play other cards in your hand. Now, during the game, you're going to have this really interesting back and forth mechanic. So in typical card games, someone takes a turn, they play their energy down, they play their cards out, they make their attacks, they pass turn to the other player. But this game has a shared player's turn, very much so like Legends of Runeterra does. If you've played that game, you take an action, your opponent takes an action, you take an action, your opponent takes an action, and once you've both taken the pass action, well, that's when the game is going to turn over to a new round. You're going to recharge your resources, untap or unexhaust all of your creatures or your cards or your heroes, and draw new cards. This game plays very much like that. At the beginning of a round, you're going to have resources down and the ability to make a decision about what you want to do next. Those actions that you're going to take are immediately going to pass initiative over to your opponent, and they're going to decide what they want to do. Now, unlike Legends of Runeterra, where you only get one attack, and you have an attack token, and only one player has an attack token in a given round, in this game, you both have the ability to attack, and you can attack many times, but only once with each creature, and never with more than once, one at a time, which is a really interesting mechanic. So just picture for me, for a moment, that you have creatures in both your space lane and in your ground lane. Let's say you have Han Solo on one side and the Millennium Falcon on the other of Luke here. Well, on your turn, you can choose to do one of a couple different things. You can choose to attack with either Han or the Millennium Falcon, exhausting them and dealing their damage either to an opponent that shares the same lane as you or dealing damage directly to your opponent's base. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. The next action that you can take is you can choose to play a card from your hand, exhausting resources and putting it out on the board. The next action you can take is you can choose to pass. I don't want to do anything else more this turn, or I'm incapable of doing anything else more this round, so I'm forced to pass. And the initiative or the turn would go over to your opponent. The next thing that you can do, which I think is probably one of the most nuanced and coolest parts of this game, is do something called Seize the Initiative. One person can do it a turn, and this is going to determine who gets to act first whenever we untap everything, unexhaust everything, draw some new cards, and add some new resources to our library so that we can play more cards in the future. And so seizing the initiative is incredibly important. So if you get out of resources first, you can seize the initiative. It is the equivalent of passing, but it's just claiming I'm going to go first next round. And then your opponent can continue to take actions as you continue to pass if you have nothing else that you can do. So you can play a card, you can attack with a card either in your ground or in your space lane. You can also seize the initiative, or you can pass. The last action that you can take is some cards have specific actions on them and you can activate them. For example, the Luke Skywalker card allows you to activate paying a resource and giving a shield token, which is barrier or ward or whatever it is that you're used to from a various card game. You give a shield token to a heroism card that you've played this round. You can activate that action as your turn, passing back to your opponent, allowing them to take an action. This back and forth action economy is very intriguing to me, and it's one of my favorite parts of Legends of Runeterra, because there's this not bluffing, but almost like stalling mechanic that can happen. Like, I don't really want to do anything because I want to see what's in my opponent's hand. I'm going to pass right now. And if they don't pass, I'm going to get another turn, right? Which is really cool. But if it comes back to me and I feel like I'm already ahead, maybe I pass too. Just call your bluff and we move on, forcing you to do something in the future because I can already grab that initiative token. I think this is a really interesting mechanic, and I think it's super fun. Now back to combat, when you are attacking, something that is different about this game than, say, from Magic the Gathering or Legends of Runeterra is that attackers have priority, very similar to games like Hearthstone, Elder Scrolls Legends, if you played that game. I know a lot of people in our community have. And a lot of other card games, specifically digital formatted card games, where the attacker has priority. This allows you as the attacker to choose whether you're going to attack one of the creatures in your opponent's lane or if you're going to attack their base. You also collect damage in this game, and your opponents attack back. So if I was to attack you with a 2-3 and you had a 2-2, I would knock you out, but I would take 2 damage counters, which would stay on my character until they got knocked out. Not all games are like that. Some games you heal up naturally at the end of each round if you don't get knocked out. Not in this game. You're going to take damage and slowly be whittled away. So you have that opportunity, if you're an aggressive player, to just go ham and attack your opponent's base, allowing your units to get attacked while that is happening, not taking out your opponent's stuff. And if you're a defensive player or a control player, you have the ability to put down cards with the Sentinel keyword, which allows you to say, hey, you can't attack my base until you go through this big beefy Sentinel character that I just put down. So if you like the attack plans of games like Hearthstone, where the attacker has priority, and not games like Magic the Gathering or Runeterra, where the attacker attacks and then the defender chooses how they want to defend, giving the defender priority, then I think you're going to like this game, especially when it comes to the combat format of it. So now we've gone over the basics of how to play a game, the actions that you're going to be able to take, and the basics on how to build your first deck. What that's going to look like. You're going to grab a leader, grab a base, fill your deck with 50 cards, a max of 3 if you're playing constructed of each type of card. And then you're going to go to fight with your opponent in both space and ground lanes simultaneously, passing initiative back and forth, passing actions back and forth until your opponent's base or your base has been defeated. Hey guys, Future Mark here. I wanted to jump in and give one quick caveat. When I was originally recording the overview video, I was so excited about talking about the deck building possibilities and the general idea of the gameplay that I totally missed out on the second game of each round, or second phase of each round. In a game of Star Wars Unlimited, you will play an initial round, playing cards from your hand, trading actions back and forth, making attacks using abilities or actions on your particular cards until you either take initiative or pass the round. And once both people pass, you are going to move on to the next phase of the round. In this phase of the round, you're going to do something pretty interesting. First off, you're going to ready all of your exhausted cards, your heroes, your spaceships that are in your space lane, your characters or different things that you've played down in your ground lane, whether it be vehicles or specific named characters or troopers. You're also going to ready all of your resources. Then you're going to draw 2 cards, and you have the ability to choose a card and place it face down in your resource row. Now, there's a couple of really interesting things. One, in most games like Magic the Gathering and others, the untap phase happens at the beginning of a round. In this case, it happens at the end of a round, which is not always going to make a huge difference, but I am a player of Marvel Champions, which is another game that resets everything at the end of a round, and there are moments when it makes a critical difference whether or not you're resetting at the beginning of a round or at the end of a round. A lot of card text does end up ultimately depending on things like that. So just keep that in mind. The reset phase, untapping, unexhausting everything, drawing your cards to, and then choosing a new card to resource is going to be happening at the end of the round, like Marvel Champions. The other thing that's really unique is instead of drawing 1 card in this game, you are going to draw 2 cards. This does accelerate games and make decking strategies a little bit more viable. In addition to that, because you're drawing 2 cards and you have the option to resource 1, but you don't have to, it also makes aggressive strategies a little bit more viable because you have a built-in draw 2, which means there's going to be a critical point in most games where you decide to stop resourcing things and instead take the 2 cards and accelerate the game towards its conclusion. And I think it's going to be critical in determining when it is that your deck stops resourcing cards and begins taking card advantage versus resource advantage or competing for resource advantage with your opponent. Every deck is going to have a different point where they cede that advantage because it's no longer valuable to them to continue to resource. Lorcana has a similar mechanic where you draw a card and then you can choose to resource a card, pasting it in your inkwell. But because you draw 1 card each round, well, card draw becomes at a premium, especially in the first couple sets of that game. So you really need cards that help you draw more cards. So you're not drawing 1 and spending 2 every round, inking 1 and playing 1. In Star Wars Unlimited, because you draw 2 cards, the exact opposite is true. You will actually very consistently be able to resource a card and play a card each round, keeping up with tempo, and eventually you'll be able to stop resourcing and begin getting more things out on your board, both in space and ground lane, because I think they're called Space and Ground Arena. In Space and Ground Lane, I'm going to call them, because you're able to take 2 cards a turn. I think this is a really interesting mechanic. I want to make sure we didn't miss out on that, because I do think it's really important, because I think it's going to really change up the way that you play this game, and I think you're going to play this game different than a lot of other card games, specifically collectible and competitive card games. This Drawing 2 feature is pretty unique, I think, anyway. I know there's probably other games that do it. This is the first one I will be really into that does it. Also, the reset at the end of the phase I think is really interesting. So all of those things go into a game of Star Wars Unlimited. I'm going to go ahead and hand things back over to Past Mark, who's going to wrap up this video with a couple more closing thoughts. Now, if this game sounds like it'd be something that'd be interesting to you, make sure you get out there to your local game store now and grab maybe one of these Spark of Rebellion pre-release packs. Grab a 2-player box. They have a new 2-player starter box, which I think is really interesting, which has everything that you need in it to play. In addition to that, it also has 2 starter decks, one for Luke and one for Vader, which aren't the easiest cards to get your hands on, as it turns out, whenever you're cracking packs. They're some of the rare leaders to be able to open up. If you're able to get your hands on one of these Spark of Rebellion pre-releases that were held by different stores in excess for $30, you're also going to get some promo cards, one of Luke and one of Vader, so you can get a promo Luke and Vader into your collection, which one side, and only one for some reason, is holographic. Let me know if you like this video. Let me know in the description, or not in the description, in the comments below, if Star Wars Unlimited is something that you're psyched about, like I am. I remember when Star Wars had a card game. They have a living card game out there as well. They're kind of like grail items for me. I discovered Star Wars Destiny right as it got announced that it wasn't going to be continuing in development. And the Star Wars living card game wasn't one that I was ever able to get into because I didn't even know that it existed, and it was already out of print and no longer being produced for years before I got into board games or even knew that Fantasy Flight was a company. So I'm super pumped that there is a Star Wars themed game. To be honest with you, the thing I'm most excited about is the creativity and deck building. And not because it's unlimited. I think, quite frankly, that's not all that exciting. But I love this 3-faction system. Heroism or villainy, and then being able to grab 2 other factions to make your deck efficient and fun. I like some of the heroes that allow you to avoid, in certain cases, some of those requirements that allow you to truly play that sort of unlimited or, team kind of criteria. For example, Hera allows all of the characters from Star Wars Rebels to go in her deck because you get to ignore their faction icons for the purposes of playing them. I think that's super intriguing and interesting. I think the game has done some really cool stuff for deck building and a lot of stuff for creativity and flexibility just in the base mechanics and structures of their game. I hope that you think so as well. Thanks for tuning into this video. Once again, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more Star Wars Unlimited content, as I am going to be going over not just opening up these Spark of Rebellion pre-releases, but also videos of me cracking every pack in a box, looking over the 2-player starter kit, and also reviewing every card in the base set Spark of Rebellion for Star Wars Unlimited. That's going to do it for this video, campers. Thanks for hanging out with me today. As always, come back again for the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you in the next one.